Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the Depths Designer, and there's been more changes happening, so I want to test a few items out, and one of the changes has been to torpedoes. I don't know if it's a permanent change or a bug, but as an example, torpedo ranges have decreased in that the efficiency of the new torpedo propeller seems to be a factor of 2 or 3 lower than the previous. So just a note, anyone with torpedoes primarily, go and check your missiles, etc. like that. Also having a problem with fail-safes, but that's I think is a bug. Anyway, because of that, I've been redoing some of my Type 4 and also giving it a little bit more power. But I want to build a new submarine, which is going to be like a mothership and slightly larger submarine. So, I mean, using the cutaway view, you can see the submarine here. We've got effectively a single deck. The lower is really just a storage area, but we've got a single deck, everything at the front, some large torpedoes at the front, small torpedoes down at the bottom. Engine room, simple engine, and batteries. I like to go for something a little larger, as is always good. And my theory is to look at the cruiser class of submarine, as it was called. Now, these were the role of the cruiser class was as a long-range merchant interdiction, take out enemy merchant ships, etc. like that. It would also, they were sometimes used for, let's get it right. So they are also sometimes used for supply missions or cargo missions to places, and just generally they were a large submarine. I think that would be about right. They were a large submarine, and they would also sometimes supply other submarines. But the cruiser class were different to most other classes of large submarine up until the development of the S400, the I-400 of the Japanese, which was, I'll talk about it separately. So the cruiser submarines, one of its primary factors is it was very well armed. It would normally have a number of cruiser level main guns, which would end up, be able to take out merchant ships by surfacing and shooting at them with very large caliber guns. More than usually they'd have a single 120, 100mm. So some examples of this that I'm using for basis is, it's seen as the original one that everyone thinks of. So I'm just checking the size of this here. So I think I'll need one more to go to the edge. There we go. The one that people think of was the French surcouf. I must be pronouncing that wrong, so apologies about that. But the surcouf was a very large submarine. As I say, as I was about to say, until the Japanese came out with the I-400, it was the largest submarine. It had a couple of 8-inch caliber guns in a watertight container or turret at the front, and then along with a number of torpedo tubes, etc. So it was quite well armed. It also had quite a large crew. I think it was about 120-man crew. So people see this as the first cruiser. But back in World War I, Germany created a number of U-type boats which had multiple 5.9-inch, so it would have 2 5.9-inch deck guns. So, and its role was to be going down into the South Atlantic and taking out the merchant ships in that area. So the French weren't the first to come up with this design, so to speak. 1, 2, 3. I need to go one more. Okay, just making sure I get everything right. So they weren't the first ones to come up with this particular design, and after that, in I think it was just after World War One, the Royal Navy, good old Royal Navy, can't be beaten by another nation, came out the X1 or XS1, I think it was, which had 2 turrets, either in front and behind the conning tower, with dual quick-firing 4-inch guns and torpedoes. Now, it wasn't actually that successful a ship, but that was more due to unreliability of engines and other parts of the ship rather than the basic idea. It did have a reasonable service in the Mediterranean, but never saw action. The Americans also came out with the Narwhal class, which were another base. They had a couple of 6-inch deck guns, and again for long-range use. One of the other interesting, which I'm not going to duplicate myself on this one, but one of the interesting ones is some of the Surcouf and some of the later ones also used to have a watertight area on the back for a seaplane. So they would actually have a seaplane that should be able to spot and do reconnaissance, but also be able to direct the guns at long range. One of the problems with the guns in a submarine is it's very low to the water, and basically you can't see very far to be able to fire guns at longer range targets. Your director, your gun director, would have a range of only say about 11 kilometers or so, whereas the guns themselves would have a range of 26 kilometers. So this plane could go up and spot for the shells when the gun director on the actual ship itself was no longer usable. So anyway, that's the models I'm sort of going to go on, and some of the basics. So the intention of my ship, though, is going to be, I think I'm going to mix and match. So I'm going to take some of the parts of the X1 and have a couple of turrets on this, I think. Nothing too massive, but it will have turrets for long-range combat, for want of a better word. And then I will also, the other bit I want to investigate is really big torpedoes. Is there a use case against the Onyx watch for some really massive torpedoes being launched by this? The third part of this is I'm going to use it as a support and carrier ship, so it will be a host or drone up with a number of the type A submarines. I'm losing my words there, sorry about that. So it will basically have a few of those being subordinate to it, and they will do a lot of the attacking. So it will be like a mothership for them, but it will supply resources, power, etc. to those ships that it's supporting. So that's the intention anyway. So anyway, any comments, obviously? But now I'm going to get onto building, and I will stop the video at some interesting parts, such as the torpedoes. We'll mostly do some damage testing with those, but also the control systems for subs, because people always like to see the control systems of how I control the sub. So I will potentially put some stop the video and see some of that. So anyway, speak to you in a bit. So after getting most of the core systems completed on the ship, we're now able to look at the balancing systems of the submarine. There is a number of ways of doing this, but the example I'm going to show of this is using fairly much just purely ACBs to control ballast and hydrofoils and balance it purely in that way. Now, first, what you'll want to do is make sure it will sink and be fairly much balanced. So I've got it in the air at the moment, so the first thing I tend to do is go to a set of ACBs, which are control blocks, which I'm going to use for ballast control, and make sure that I have set buoyancy to 0 as a starting point. Then I am going to release it into the water and just see, make sure it will actually sink. It's surprising how buoyant some components of a ship are, which you wouldn't expect to be buoyant, but are actually more buoyant than they need to be. Now this is slowly sinking, slightly nose down, but not by too much, but a slight nose down attitude to it. Now to cure that, there's a number of ways I could do. One is put a little bit of lead at the rear behind the mast point, so you find where your mass is and you put a little block behind. That might just be enough to pull it up. Still a little bit nose heavy. You can just add lead until it doesn't have to be exactly equal, but it is better if it's at least stable. So there it's going back up actually up now, so it's no slightly nose light. I prefer a nose light to a nose heavy situation. Okay, so we're okay, and it was going down, although not by much, because it's surprising how buoyant some of the missile components are, as an example. Right, my next stage is finding the point that I want to have as my surfaced position. So I'll start at 100. So this will be like your cruising point. So look, that's a little high. I think I'd like it because you want your controls and planes to be underwater, but you want to be mainly out of the water so you get a better speed. So that's a little high. Let's take that down. There's that control block. Now what I can do here is just come back out. Now it looks like, let's just try say 60%. 50%. Still a little high. That might be okay. Most of the propellers are underwater, so 50 would be our fully surfaced position for the moment. Now what I would like to do is, you can see it's not stable in the roll and also the pitch. So my next stage would be to just make it, put in controls to stabilize roll and pitch, just purely using the ballast tanks. Now what I have done to the shape of the ship is the sides have these buoyant areas inside them, all along these sides, with control blocks. And first thing that I'd want to do is, we've got a -1, which is a nose heavy situation. So on both of these front ones, we want to say if the vehicle pitch is from 0 to minus 90, minus, yeah, we'll say minus 89. I don't like to put unlimited. Then the air pump, which is right next to me, so we activate to 100%, and there we go. And we're going to copy that over to the other side. So that's going to be there. So that's going to now affect both of those. We also set this at the back here, but we set the buoyancy to be 0. And copy over to here. And I did forget to change the priority on those front two, because we want the priority to be more important than any overall priority, which is used by the general buoyancy ACBs in the center control. Okay, next we want to effectively reverse this. So if we go in here, we'll paste, and this time we want to go 0 to 89. If it's 0 to 89, then this time, which means it's pointing up, we want this one to go set buoyancy to 0. And I will copy that one around as well. So now the pitch is staying at a fairly good 0. So these blocks, we should see them, if I turn the forces on, you'll mostly see them to turn off and on quite frequently, just to balance that, balance the pitch up. Okay, next we need to look at the roll. You see the roll is not stable, it's going from one side to the other. Now what I tend to do is, again, I have set up a buoyancy area. Where are we? In the center here. So this is almost in line with the center of mass. If I can find it again. There we go. So we want to say roll. Go back here. Very similar, but this time we want to say, that didn't copy. Oh well, okay. We need to say if roll is, we'll start with this one, 0 to 89. Then air pump. Nice and close, set at 2. So that should put that up to full power. Now is that helping or making it worse? So minus is to the right. So actually if it goes in right, I want this to go 0 if it's minus. So that was actually okay. So now we need to just, actually no, I want this to actually set buoyancy to 0. And this one we want, well, let me just copy that one across first. Make sure I duplicate these. this one activate, and then we do the reverse. So this one from 0 to 89, activate at 100, and this one deactivate. So now this should keep itself fairly in the center. There will be a slight rocking, because it can't be exactly 0 and 1. It goes from one positive to the next positive. Now, one thing to be aware of, you are adjusting your balances, so you might want to just check to make sure this will still sync, because there is always a chance that even when you put this down to 0, it doesn't sync anymore, because the pitch and roll controls keep on bringing it back to the surface. That seems to be going down. It seems to have stopped a little bit there. On the rocking motion, so possibly I might have to just reduce the amount of force they are applying on their 100% and set it to say 50%. 100% may be applying too much lift force. So let me go around that and sort that out so it will actually go down. Now that the basic trim control has been set up using the air pumps, next we need to set up, or I'd like to set up, the more active depth control and trim using the hydrofoils. So the first one I'm going to look at is actually pitch control using the rear hydrofoils. Now what they do is they will keep the pitch within a 1 degree plus or minus. So it does give you a slight porpoising, but that can actually be beneficial. You can set it to the 0 as well. That would make it go fairly, keep on flicking, but that's okay as well. So what we do is pitch. If the pitch is positive, so we'll set it at the moment to be from 1 to 89, which means it's nosing up. We want the rear of the ship to actually be brought up. So we do hydrofoils, set the angle to 45 degrees. That will force the back of the sub up. Now we want to make sure it only affects the local blocks, so that's 10 blocks there. And priority 0, that looks okay to me. So we copy that. And then we have the opposite. If we paste, which will be -1, -89, and this one sits at -45. Now if I just release the ship, you can see at the moment they're pointing slightly up. That was just due to the change. So if we release the ship slightly, now there's no 0 set, so they'll either be pointing up or they'll be pointing down. They'll never modify. So at the moment, because the nose is, let's see, I know we're still level at the moment, because the balance tanks are holding it level. So this would actually be forcing it up and fighting the ballast tanks. So what we can do, just to cure that one, so that there is a neutral value as well. So if we set this from, yep, so that's on 1, we need a neutral value. Let's put that one just there, paste, and if we say it's 0 to 0, or -1 to 1, set angle to 0. There we go. And actually what we can do is make this smaller. So go 0.9. So if it's within 1 degree, it will not it will set the hydrofoils to neutral. That's good. That will work. Right, next we want a depth control. And this is where we have the different states of the system. So I'll bring out the water for the moment. We have there is no enemy around, in which case we want it quite high out of the water. And then we'll have the closing with the enemy, and that's also for closing. Once we're in range of the enemy to, say, fire the guns and fire the torpedoes, in this case, let's say 3,000 meters, we want it to go down to a height that is only just got the turrets here in play. And then finally, we'll have an emergency. The enemy have got close for some reason, in which case it will dive down to, say, 100 meters. There will be a third situation, which is you're just about to run into the ground. The water under the water, the seabed is coming up close to you, so you want to stay above the seabed. Okay, we'll do that with a separate one. So, okay, 3 states. Now, what we'll do is try to set the first state, which will be the battle speed. Sorry, I say battle speed, the battle condition in range of an enemy. Now, the way I do that is with control blocks on the front fins. Now, first of all, what I'm going to have to do is make sure I'm sat there. Yep. Release the ship. Give us a bit of speed. Take it down a little bit. Just give us about 50% on the speed. Should be fine. So we want to be a bit higher than that, I think. So let's just see what we do. Right, so at the front, near the torpedoes. Right, the first thing we're going to do is set the height of vehicle amplitude, and we work out what my current height is. So this one, it will be if I am too high. So I'm currently at, let's see, it still thinks I'm currently, that's the wrong way. So minus 11. So where do I actually want to be? I want to come up 1, 2. I want to be have the turrets just out of the water. So let's say I want to come up 6 meters. So we're saying minus 6, and it's the height of the ACB. So if I am minus 6, we want the hydrofoils to point nose down. We just make sure we're only getting the 8 hydrofoils in range. There we go. And then, so if we go high, that will force us down. And then this one, we want to do the opposite. So if it is from a minus 6, we want to set the angle high. So if we look outside now, we can see the hydrofoils are aiming up. You see the force is forcing us up. We're coming out of the water. The guns are now just outside the water, and you can see the hydrofoils are now switching between up and down, keeping at what they feel is -6. Because remember, that control block is at -6. My altitude of the of the ship, I think, is potentially based on the middle of the mast point, which is potentially slightly lower than those hydrofoils. But that's okay. That's keeping that at a nice pace. Now, okay. We only want these ones to take effect when we are within, say, 3,000 meters. So if we get this particular central control block to say only when the enemy range is within 3,000 meters. And then what we do is we put the ACBs. So actually, why don't I do this the reverse? So if the enemy is not within 3,000 meters, the ACBs within within 2 meters disable. So that has disabled the control blocks if there is, if the enemy is not within 3,000 meters. Now what we need to do is enable them again if the enemy is within 3,000 meters. So if we paste this one, now we've got to make sure that this controller is a little further away. And we're gonna, if there's an enemy within 3,000, if there's an enemy within 3,000 meters, activate those control blocks, which would activate those ones again. Okay, I'm going to deactivate this one for the moment. The next one we want to set is, what if someone gets very close? Let's say someone's tracking us down and we want to now dive down really, really deep. So in this case, we're going to go down to 100 meters. So on this one, we're going to say, it's very similar to the previous ones. We just change it to 100 meters. So that's going to hold us around the minus 100 meters depth on the ship, nice and level. And that would be the equivalent of some ship trying to hunt us down and has got within 1,000 meters. Now what we'll do is we'll set the hydrofoils and a neutral position. So these ones we only want to activate when there is someone within that 1,000 meters. So we'll enable that. So that will disable those. Yep. Now this one here, we can use this same one to activate those. There we go. As well. And then finally, because if this, you can see these have got stuck down, which is going to push into the sea. So what we need to be able to do is say go to 0. So we're going to have another one, say just, where should we put that? We'll put the neutral here, and this will be, if there's no enemy within 3,000 meters, If there is no enemy within 3,000 meters, the hydrofoils set angle 0. In other words, go to neutral. And I didn't put a range on that, so it didn't affect anything. Let's set that range to be okay. So that's set those to neutral, which will effectively start bringing the ship up based upon the air pumps. But we haven't set the air pumps down, so it's still going to be sinking. So now we go in here and we do the same with air pumps. So this, we want, again, 3 states for the air pump, maybe only 2 states actually. So this one will set at being range, nothing, there's no enemy within 3,000 meters. Air pumps everywhere. Set the buoyancy to be, we'll try 40. This is the, just want it just slightly out of the water, but not much. Actually, no, we want this to be actually quite high out of the water as our cruising speed. So we'll try that, enable it. So that's going to be setting all of the hydrofoils, the air pumps, and we'll start going up. As you can see, we are starting to go up. Whilst that's happening, what I'll do is I'll copy that. To the one next to it. And this will be, if there is an enemy, then set the buoyancy value 0. And just realize we need to set that to a no limit so it affects everywhere. There we go. That's better. That will act a little quicker. It wasn't affecting, so we should have lots of buoyancy tanks trying to push us up to the surface now. So this is us back at our cruising depth. So this is our go fast, just get as close as we can to within, or get it within 3,000 meters. Final one is what if the seabed is getting a bit close? Now, couple of ways to do that one. We can either control these foils at the front, or there is some foils under the very center of the ship we can control as well. We'll try it with these front ones as well, so it's all in the same area. And we'll put it here. We'll use this one here. So what you need to do is have altitude over terrain. Now this is terrain rather than, you don't want sea or terrain, because sea or terrain is the sea level, whereas the altitude over terrain is actually would be the sea bed. So let's say the value is the value above the sea level is 50. We want 50 meters, not minus, but 50 meters. Or not. So if vehicle altitude is not, so we're within 50 meters of the seabed, then the hydrofoils set angle value of plus 45. We want to make sure that does all of the ones which are 8. There we go. And we need that up the priority to ensure, we'll put it 2 for the moment, up the priority to it that overrides any of the other depth controls. And just before we do some combat testing, this is a cutaway view of the ship as it is complete, ready for use. subject to a little bit of combat testing and hopefully some bugs fixes in the game. So it's quite interesting, this view. Pressing the end button allows you to see this, and then you set the cut level, which is usually just set cut below on all the zeros. And so simply you can see here we have the conning tower here, which is relatively empty but has the periscope and all of the detection equipment. We've got the main bridge area here, and below it the AI. Going forward, we have a gun turret, the first front gun system, which goes most of the way down. You can see ammo storage also below is stored near and with the gun. Front resource storage, and the front really long torpedo system. Now, one little bug at the moment is if the torpedo gantry gets damaged in any way, when it rebuilds it, it puts in a default missile instead of the missile I have selected. That's one of the bugs I hope will get fixed in the game. I did change the torpedo a little bit from what we put in the video, just to give it a little bit more speed, because it wasn't really exiting out correctly, because the sub was almost faster than the torpedo, which is not good. Okay, going backwards, some fuel storage down the bottom, just below the X turret, which is the rear turret. And then we have the AI little repair room, where I've got some repair bots. And then the skipper missile launcher is on the upper deck, and the close range missile launcher. And below, this is also the rear close range torpedo missiles, which I didn't put in the video, but just some short range missiles. And below we have the diesel generator, which is basically, yes, it's not the most efficient, but it's designed to run at very low RPM and just use basically lots of superchargers, and it only charges up the battery. The big battery then runs at 15%, so it has a very good efficiency, and yeah, it provides power for most of the ship, which it doesn't need very much power. There's no shields. Most of it is just the drive and other little bits and pieces like ammo producers where necessary. So we don't need much power in this, and it will supply power to its other ships in the group, because this will intentional. At the back we have some vehicle spawners. We'll spawn in some Type A. So anyway, let's go and give this a quick little battle test. So I have spawned in this Capital Onyx Watchship just as a test ship at the moment. Nice and big, and it's over 5,000 meters away, so we can see how the ship goes through its various areas. Now we're getting to the main control. Now one thing I've added here is I've added in the main control area. So I can go to the bow camera, that's the stern camera, and that's the periscope. Now the periscope will actually try and follow whatever is targeted. At the moment it's not going to have detected anything, but hopefully we can come back to that once it's detected an enemy. So it should now be heading towards the target area. We can mostly see here this is not detected. Oh, it's detected, so let's go and have a look, see what our periscope now looks like. No, it's still not detecting it 100% maybe. No, it's only occasionally detecting, I think. Oh no, it has now. So I've put a camera, you see, at the end, at the front. So let's just see if it's okay, I see. I've got control of it, so I can use this to go and find the enemy. Where are you, Mr. Capital Ship? It must be this way. Let's go and have a look. There we are. So that's the periscope. Okay, I thought it would just track where it was intended to go, but obviously not. Okay, so our torpedoes have fired at about 4,000. They're exiting and they're just about faster than the ship. Now the other thing I'm hoping here is that this will actually go broadside. One of the problems I was having with the ship is it wouldn't go broadside. Now it looks like, is it going to go? Let's have a look. No, it's not gone broadside, so I'm going to force it. Torpedoes are firing out okay. The skipper missiles seem to be firing, and the guns are firing. But as I say, it's not wanting to go broadside. It's wanting to continually close with the target, which is annoying. Because that's upsetting the torpedoes, and I think torpedoes need to launch a little faster. Never mind, I can sort that out later. Let's have a look how these torpedoes actually do against the enemy, which is one of the primaries I wanted to see on this. Is large torpedoes going to be effective on the Onyx Watch ships? Now what I'm hoping it will do is blow out the base of the enemy. Now it looks like he's already taken a fair bit of damage from the guns, which is good. Now we would normally have some of the Type A subs in this battle as well, so they would be putting their torps etc. in. Just want to see what happens when these big torpedoes come in. Here come some of the large torpedoes finally. Significant explosions, and once the explosions disappear, that's blown some very big holes in the base of the ship. Yeah, okay, they worked. I think I need to just work on, I'll get somewhere which is slightly less noisy, work on them exiting out of the torpedo tubes, and also work out why this some of the missiles are attacking my own ship, which is not good, as you can see. I might have to remove them. They are coming round and attacking myself. And the other one is I need to just work out why this is going so close. It has killed it, but you can see how close we've got. Well, this must be about 1,000 meters. It's supposed to be broadsiding at about 3,000 meters. Anyway, I will sort that out. It seemed to be different spawns. You'd spawn it once, it was okay. Spawn it another times, it wasn't. Anyway, little bugs. It's a game. What the heck? Anyway, that's it for now. Any comments? Leave below as always. This was mainly, to be honest, about big torpedoes, but also just is it the controls of a submarine, how I set up the controls and how to make it without using PIDs and all the rest of it. Anyway, until next time, keep playing the game and have fun.